What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So we're going to pick up where we left off on the last episode. We're going to try to get as much as we can put back together on the M3. Now, I do have the exhaust system and the back wheels at my buddy's shop getting repaired, so hopefully we can get those back in time to get them on the vehicle. But if not, we got plenty of stuff to do in order to keep us busy, so stay tuned. All right, guys, to start things off with, I got to extract this bolt out of this steering rack right here. It is broken off. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my drill bit along with some Harbor Freight extractor bits, and hopefully we can get that bad boy out of there so that I can utilize the mount for the power steering hose. And also I need to get the other power steering cooler out of this car here because I cannot get that clamp, well, this hose clamp piece off of this cooler. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the other one out of that car, and we'll start putting the whole front end back together, and then we'll pick up from there and just start putting the layers back together. Well, that actually worked out in my favor because when I put the drill bit up to the broken fastener, it just went right through and it ended up being just packed dirt. So I put some brake cleaner on it and blew it out with compressed air, and we got it all mounted up now. So the power steering hose is all good to go. So now we need to move on to extracting the power steering cooler out of this vehicle here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to that. And then after we get that out, I'll end up putting the whole assembly back together as far as the radiator with all the plastic pieces and everything. And then from there, we'll move back to the engine bay and start putting things back together, getting it ready for whenever we could put the front end together. I still got to extract these rivets right there and take these bumper guard shocks out because I'm going to be replacing it with the M3 carbon Kevlar bumper support. So got to get these things prepped in order to get it all put back together. So let's go ahead and tackle it. So while I had this radiator out, I wanted to see if there's actually a difference between an M3 and non-M3 radiator. And apparently there is. The M3 radiator is this one here, and the non-M3 is this one here. And the M3 is a lot thicker than the non-M3. So definitely going to be using the M3 radiator. And this power steering cooler is actually from an M3. I had bought this separately whenever I swapped that engine into this car here. So I'm going to take that one out, and these fittings are a lot better shape. These are actually pretty scratched up. These are actually pretty smooth, so definitely going to use this one. Then I'm going to clean the plastic covers off and then put it all back on the radiator. Then from there, I guess we'll go ahead and use my drill, take these shocks out, get the core support ready, and then we'll move back on to putting the rest of the engine back together, and then finally get the front end put back on. Well, this thing was like a freaking big giant jigsaw puzzle. You have to put it in a certain order for it all to clamp together. So basically, you have to lay the radiator down with the condenser and then the side pieces, and then you have to pay note to these little bottom pieces right here. They have slots that the plastic side pieces have that it has to go into. I didn't get it right the first time. I didn't get the holes to line up just right, but once I figured that out, got it on, got it in place, this piece right here fit evenly on the side plastics, and then you have to put the shroud over, and then you button it all together. But she's done for the most part, so we can check that off the list. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to drilling out these rivets and getting these bumper shocks out so that we can have the front end done, the radiators done, and then we can start buttoning up the intake manifold, AC lines and everything, and finally get this front end put on. All right, guys, so we're making great headway. We got the coolant system all installed, fan clutch, fan, radiator shroud, radiator lines, reservoir with the line that feeds to the line, to the radiator hose right here. We got the power steering cooler lines installed, and all of the hoses for the AC system, for the compressor, and also the condenser. So this part is all good to go. And the windshield wiper reservoir is damaged, so I'm not going to be installing that. So I need to do something with all the wiring that's associated with that. So what I think I'm going to do for the time being, because this wiring is pretty chewed up, it's been dragging the ground and everything. So, and also this barometric pressure sensor has been wired and repaired a couple times. So I need to retain this, and I also need to wire in a resistor in place of this sensor here for the windshield wiper reservoir to make it think that it's full. So I'm going to find the wiring. Once I cut it, I'll locate the wirings for that sensor, put a resistor in place, and also make sure I don't cut the wires that are associated with this barometric pressure sensor, because I will be retaining that. And that will clean up a lot of the wiring, all this mess right here, and make things a little bit more simpler in the front. And later on, once I decide to get another reservoir, I need to find another wiring harness for that piece, and then once I decide to install all that back, I can always solder the wiring back in and make it look OEM. But Also, another problem I ran into when I was looking through my parts is the oil cooler lines for the oil cooler. They're kinked and leaking. So I do have the aftermarket oil cooler that was on this car, and I do have the end fittings right there. So there's the oil cooler, if you can see it right there. I need to come up with a game plan to mount that in the front. And I'm gonna have to remove some of the shroud right here and come up with some brackets to mount that somewhere, probably on the lower portion, and utilize that. And I got the lines over there for it. So I'm gonna have to put those lines on before I put the intake manifold on, because you can't get a wrench in there and tighten them with that intake manifold on. So I'm gonna put the lines on, put the intake manifold on, and just get the rest of that buttoned up. And then after I get that done, I'll start coming up with a game plan for the rest of the stuff. So let's go ahead and tackle that. All right, so it's starting to look like a complete engine. I got the intake manifold installed, all the evap hoses and everything connected to it, and the dipstick is installed as well, and along with the DME and the cover. So I did take care of some of the wiring. I chopped it, and as you saw, I put heat shrink on the ends. Now the two wires that are associated with the sensor for the level of the washer, I tried to ohm it out, and it looks like it's not a resistor. It might be like a photo sensor or something like that. So I need to do some research on that and see exactly what it's gonna be that I need to solder in place to fool the computer to think that the level is full. So for the time being, I heat shrinked it and taped it up, and I'm going to repair this wiring here, and just need to see where the proper location for this barometric sensor is gonna be. And also, I was inspecting the wiring because they had some splices where one of the wires of the sensor went, and I wanted to make sure I got the proper wires. And when I was doing that, as you can tell, a lot of it's frayed and messed up. And when I was untaping it, I found more fraying and wires touching inside the harness where they had it taped off. So definitely a good thing I decided to do that. But it's going to simplify things for now, and I'm okay with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and focus on the radiator core support. I'm going to take this rubber ducting off and kind of see what I got to work with and come up with a game plan to mount that oil cooler somewhere in this location. But we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, so I got the bumper bar on the radiator core support to give me a general idea of the space that I have. Now, looking through right here, I have plenty of room in order to mount this up. As you can tell, it's not very thick. And as you can see, plenty of room. Now I have to take these side custom brackets that I made off. And I think the game plan I'm going to go with is I'm not utilizing these hood latches anymore because I have the hood pins for the carbon fiber hood. Now I'll take these out and keep them in case I do get a factory hood later and I want to utilize that. But I'll take those off and I'll use these mounting points here and here. Make some custom 90-degree brackets to come down, and they'll mate up to these side brackets here. And I'll be able to hang it wherever I need it to be. And then I'll run the lines up to it and tighten it down. And that'll give me the proper placement and location for that oil cooler. So I'm going to have to gather up the materials for that, and it don't look like we were going to be doing that on this episode. So I do have the mid pipes and everything for the exhaust. I think that's what we're going to move on to next. So let's go ahead and tackle that. All right, guys, well, we got quite a bit done, but not enough in order to let the car run for the first time. But once we get the oil cooler installed, I can guarantee you the next episode, we will be getting this thing cranked and running for the very first time. But once I get my wheels and my exhaust in, I'll be able to finish it all up, and we'll be able to take this thing on its very first test drive. New subscribers, thank you for subscribing to my channel. And once we're done with this BMW, we'll be starting on the budget K-swap. So I know some of you subscribers subscribe for that, but just stay patient. We'll be there before you know it, and I'll be able to enjoy driving my M3 around while I take the time to K-swap my Civic. So lots to look forward to. If you're here for the first time and you like the content, definitely subscribe. You guys, y'all know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Definitely see you guys on the next episode.